Hello. I came up with this fly after receiving a serious butt kicking at Nelson Spring Creek in the Paradise Valley in Montana. It was a long day to say the least. I had dreamed up a fly that I beat to death over the course of the day that just didn't work at all. And the only saving grace is my friend Dean was also fishing that day, and while he did marginally better than I did, it was a tough day for both of us. So I didn't feel as badly as I might have, but it kind of ate at me for a while. And I think it was maybe the following summer, I read something somewhere that a Beatis, just before it hatches, gets very dark in color as it's coming up to the water's surface. And the thorax expands a great deal and almost turns black. And so that inspired the idea for this fly, which is effectively a big black thorax on this thing. The following fall, I found myself out at Nelson's again, and I've fished the exact same pool, and within about 4 casts, hooked a monster rainbow. Took me about, I'm going to say, at least 20 minutes to get the fish in. It was a great fish, and I've done well with this fly ever since. It's designed as a dropper. You fish it off the back of a dry fly, maybe no more than 6 inches, almost in the surface film, but slightly below that. And it's a dropper, and it's for the fall, and it works best out west. I have not really tried the fly in the east to any degree, although I would imagine it'll work fine there as well if you have Baetis, which we do here in Ohio. So give it a shot. I think it's a great fly. I'm tying this on a standard number 20 dry fly hook, but it probably should be tied on a 22. I just wasn't sure I could photograph the 22 closely enough. I'm using Benecki 12-aught black thread. Viva 16-aught would work well. And here I've got some bronze mallard dyed olive. You can use just standard bronze mallard. I don't think it's going to make a dime's worth of difference. And I've just pulled about three or four strands to length. I think it's 3 in this case, which on a hook this small is the best way to do it. Tie it in long and just pull it to length. Right here, I've got a left turkey bite. I'm using the long side of a turkey bite feather, and that's because I want the segmentation to be small. Since it's such a small fly, if I used the biot side, it would be too widely spaced. I'm tying this in notch up because I want a rough body. That's assuming, of course, I'm tying it in on the far side of the hook, which I just about always do. Just binding it down underneath the hook. I'll start winding by hand because it's pretty fragile. but I'll grab it here in a minute with the hackle pliers. And this will give me a well segmented body on a fly that's designed to be an emerger. You always want segmentation on an emerger. At least I do. And I sort of pinch that feather by taking some turns on either side, closing in on it, and then cut it off flush and took turns back over it. And I want about 40% of the fly covered with this Thorax, and I'm going to use thin skin for the Wingcase. Just a piece of black thin skin, and it'll tend to curl one way or the other. If you have the curl facing down, it's a little easier to work with. Otherwise, it'll curl up and get in the way of what you're doing. This keeps the curl of the thin skin out of the way, and I just want to make sure I've got it well centered. And this Thorax is going to be dark and bulbous. That's what I'm shooting for here. And I've got some olive dubbing here. This is blue wing olive, but it actually could stand to be darker than this. But this will work fine. And this is super fine. And I'm dubbing it very tightly. I want this dubbing compact. I want this fly to sink. It's going to be a dropper, so I want it to sink. Nothing worse than having your dropper float. Although I've caught fish on floating droppers. For the legs, we're going to use fibers from a bronze mallard flank feather dyed olive. 8 to a dozen fibers, because some of them will be short and they won't get used. They'll get pulled out, as you'll see. So you want to do too many fibers on this. We're shooting for just a couple on a side ultimately, but you'll see as I pull this through. Fold this over and just trap it once, thin skin, dividing the fibers. And then just take the stem and slowly and carefully pull. And this is kind of tricky. And you want to pull these to just beyond the thorax, to where they extend just beyond the thorax. And that worked. If you pull them all the way out by accident, it's not a big deal. Just do it again. And don't hold these fibers under a lot of tension, or you can pull out what you've done already. I'll straighten up the thin skin. If you feel you need more turns, do them now. I'm going to go ahead and just whip finish at this point. Trying to get some good coverage. I think that'll do it. Now, in order to cut the thin skin and have it work out so you don't have a lot on either end, rather than taking one cut across the top, take two diagonal cuts. Even then, you can see I've got a little bit of thin skin there left over. I don't know. I think that'll be fine. We're going to epoxy this anyway. This is Solar Res Thin. And I'm going to put a little on the end of a bodkin, a very fine bodkin. And looks like a big blob, and it kind of is, but that's all right. And I like to put it on towards the back because I don't want to get this stuff in the eye. I even try to avoid the thread wraps, and I'll let it sink in a little bit. And then I'll hit it with my light. And here's the light. And that's the pre-hatch Beatis. It's bulbous. Thorax on that thing. And it's been a really great dropper. One of my go-to, especially in the fall. Next, I'm going to throw on a couple of coats of Sally Hansen's Clear to make it even more bulbous. Flip this around. You can take a look 360. And that's all there is to that one. And give it a shot. I've really done well with it.